Alright, so today we're gonna make just a quick tutorial slash walkthrough of SaltStack. So there's a lot of different automation software out there, lots of different types. There's Puppet and Ansible and Chef and a whole bunch of different ones, and SaltStack is one of the many. The reason that I went with SaltStack was, first of all, it was on a recommendation of a friend, but then once I got into using it, it really felt like the guys that wrote it were system administrators, not programmers. So in other words, it feels like it was written by system administrators for system administration. So there's a lot of features and things in it that you don't necessarily see or experience with other products. So SaltStack is open source. There's a huge community around it. It's written in Python. You can do all kinds of different mods and things with it. You can customize your own modules and states and pillars and all that stuff. And for this video, we're going to do a walkthrough of the entire, from starting up a machine and then using that Salt server to launch additional machines and to pre-configure them. And I think we'll probably just do something simple like WordPress or Drupal or something, and I'll decide when we get a little bit further into it. But basically this will be the first video, and depending on how long it goes, we might break it up into a couple of different ones. So anyway, so this is the SaltStack website. If you end up going to just saltstack.com, you'll get here. First thing we'll need to do is install Salt. So if you go to the SaltStack website, and don't go to downloads, because you'll just go into a loop of confusingness. But if you come here to the main homepage and you scroll down to right here where it says documentation, you can click on documentation, and then right here is where you actually want to be. So this repo.saltstack.com, and then you'll come down here and you'll see your different operating system versions and the bootstrap stuff. So for us, we're going to use Amazon Linux, and it drops us right to the how to install it. So let's first launch a box, and we're going to do it. I've already created the VPC, so there's another video. I have another video up there for that, so you can go watch that if you really want to. But basically it's same setup as before. We've got two public, two private in different zones, so that we can take advantage of the multiple zones for high availability. So anyway, we'll go back to EC2, and let's running instances. We're going to launch a new one, and again we're going to go with the Linux AMI, and we're just going to use the free micro tier, even though I doubt I get this for free anymore. I've had this account a long time. Let's see, and we want to make sure that we are in the for the Salt server, we actually want it to be on the private subnet. So we're going to put it in private zone A, and it's not going to need an IP address, and it will need a let's do that first. Prod servers. Actually, that'll be fine. We can use that role. Let's cover that real quick though. Let's go back and just do a new one, because you're going to need a role. It needs to have a role. So let's do a new role for SaltStack. SaltMaster, this will be called. And it actually is going to need full access to, actually doesn't need that. It needs to full access. Okay. Create the role. So we've got, these are our policies. So we're just using EC2 full access and S3 full access, and that's so we can do so we can read and write from the S3 for storing config files and stuff, but also so that we can launch instances from Salt. So we're going to take advantage of the Salt Cloud stuff, and we're going to integrate it with Amazon, and it'll be wonderful. So let's kick back over to EC2. Let's make sure we got our security groups that are going to work for us, and we don't. So let's create a SaltMaster security group, and it will be in the VPC add rule. Okay, now for the SaltMaster, you need port 22. It's just straight SSH for this, and we want it to be part of the 192.168.0.0/16. Basically anything in the VPC, and we're gonna also want port 4505 and port 4506. So the way the communication works is you'll send a command from the SaltMaster, and it is sent via SSH to the minions, and then the minions actually call back on these other ports on 4505 and 4506 to run the states. So one of them is like pillar data, and the other one's like transactional data or something. I forget which port does what. But basically, you only need to have these open up on the SaltMaster. You do not need to open anything but SSH on the other one, on the minions. So we'll just do the same here, here, and here, and we'll do, and then that is gonna do it for that. Okay. Now we're also gonna need a external. Let's do a external, and this one only needs SSH, and I'm gonna do it from anywhere right now, but you can lock that down later. Doing from my IP would be better for security reasons, but I'm not worried about it right now. I'll lock it down later, but this is just for testing and playing around, so it's not a big deal. Okay, now Acme. So now on this internal one, just a little trick. Don't add anything, just go ahead and create it. And then when it's created, you can come back here and copy this ID, edit it, and then use that as your ID. And then just do all traffic. So this allows everything that has this security group to talk to everything else with the same security group on any port. Okay, so it allows basically all of the internal communication. Now, if you need to lock that down for DMZ reasons or whatever other security reasons, then that's up to you. You can lock that down any way you want. So, all right, so let's launch our first one. Okay, so we're going to do our VPC, and we're going to pick private zone A with no IP, and this will be the SaltMaster. Add storage, and for this one, we are actually going to give it 30 gigs, and the reason why is that we'll end up storing miscellaneous configurations and other files and things of that nature on this machine, so you might as well take advantage of the disk. SaltMaster, and we're going to use our existing ones we already created. This is going to be a SaltMaster server, and it's going to also be, actually that might not need anything else. Anyway, so the SaltMaster for the external facing groups, I don't think it's going to need anything else really, but the beautiful thing about being in a VPC is that you can change the security groups at will. That was not always the case, so the reason why I'm kind of like still hesitant is that in the previous, before VPCs came, and yes, I've been doing Amazon stuff that long, you couldn't, if you launched a machine, it launched with those security groups and that was it. If you had to change anything, you had to delete the box and relaunch a new one. So I'm a little hesitant, but yeah, that should be the only one we really need. We can add the other two later if we need to, but I think we'll be fine. We'll use the same key I always use. View instances. Okay, so this will be our SaltMaster. Okay, now because this is a internal IP address and there's no public IP address, and it is sitting in the private subnet, we will need to create another machine which is called a BastionHost, and it does nothing but allow you to gain access to the private subnet. So we're going to launch one more machine. Again, it'll be a small one, but this one will sit in public. We're going to put it in zone A. It will have an IP address, and it doesn't need any roles because it is public facing. I guess technically we could give it a role, but it's, you know what, let's do that. Let's give it a role just so that we've got it, because even if we're not going to assign anything to it, you know, we can just go like this. And that way if we need to, you know, copy something up to it or whatever, we can move it around, at least doing that. But I don't think we're going to need it. But let's just do it that way anyway. So let's do the BastionHost because that's what it's going to be. And next, and it's not going to need any disk really. And this one is going to need just these two. So internal and external, so that it has the ability to come in, and then once you're on it, you can hit the other machines. So launch acknowledge, yes, I know. Okay. Alright, now see, this one does have a public IP address. So let's get a terminal here. Okay, so that's up and running. That's going to be our IP address, so we're going to go ahead and jump onto that. Now, just in case you guys are wondering, if you are on a Windows machine, there's a program called Putty that you can use to connect to the servers. Obviously, I haven't run a Windows machine in a long time, so this is just my standard Linux box. I'm running Slackware 14.2 right now, and this is eTerm. It's my favorite shell, and believe it or not, but I'm still running Enlightenment 16. So I've been running the same desktop for a long time, but you know, don't change what's not broken. You know, works great and I love it. So anyway, without further ado, so this is the thing. So like everything else, the first thing you do, update, yum update, run your updates. Even though it's a brand new image, the images are not updated every day, so there's always pending stuff. So just get in the habit. First thing you do is run the update whenever you launch a new machine. Now, like I said, this one's just going to be a BastionHost, so we're actually going to play a little step through on this one because it's not going to actually be doing anything. Okay, so we're actually going to go in here. I'm going to modify the MOTD. We're going to say, we're just going to do one of these. Just for arts. This is just so that when we connect to it, we can know that we're on the BastionHost. That way when we log in, it'll give us that, and then we'll be able to see that we're on the BastionHost. So the next thing we need to do is get the IP of our Salt server. Okay, which you can see here is 192.168.10.142. Okay, so this time we are going to run eval SSH agent, and we're going to do SSH add, and we're going to add the key, the SSH key, SSH AWS new. Now we can do SSH dash. Let's just go ahead and do the one I ran before. We're going to add the dash A, and that allows us to basically use the SSH agent, and it's going to essentially pass our SSH key through to the other server without actually writing it on the other server. So we don't have to worry about security issues with leaving that other, without leaving your key on a public box out there. So now you can see I'm on this box, and I can just jump straight across to 142, and yes, and okay, so now we are on the SaltMaster. So just like before, yum update. Once this is, oh, I've got a security group issue, or a load, I've got a VPC issue, looks like, because this does not have internet access. So let's double check our VPC. A little troubleshooting here. Let's see, we launched that one in, let's make sure we launched it in the right place. Okay, so the SaltMaster is running in subnet B27, and VPC subnet okay, this one. So private zone A, which is right. Look at our route table. Okay. Oops. See that right there? That's a problem. Oops, we gotta go over to route tables for that. Route A. Yeah, that's just a fat finger. 0, save. Okay, let's just double check the other ones, make sure. Alright, now we'll come back over here and try that again. There we go. That's all it was. Just a little mistake on the typo. Okay, once this is done, we're going to want to follow these steps right here. So we're going to go ahead and get that open. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is install their repo. So we're just going to copy that and paste it. In Linux, if you highlight something and middle click, it copies and pastes for you. So in case you're wondering. Okay, so for example, if I just highlight that and then middle click, it pastes it for me on the command line, which is a rather nice feature. And we don't really need to do this, but we're going to. Okay. Then these ones are all, we're going to run, we don't need to run all of them. We're going to run this one. And yes, you could do them all in a line, but I don't care. We'll just cut paste. Yes. Okay. Now the next one, we're going to run salt minion. You don't necessarily need to run the salt minion on the SaltMaster itself, but it makes it nice to do debugging and stuff, because you can run the states and stuff through the salt call and get the output and stuff. So it helps to have it on there even if you don't actually run the minion on the master, just to have the binaries and the other stuff there. So we probably won't use SSH, salt SSH for anything. What salt SSH is for running salt states on environments where you can't actually install a salt minion. So like a switch or a router or something like that, where there's SSH commands that you can run, but there's not really a place for a minion or other type service to actually run as a service. So I probably won't use it. I definitely won't use it for this project, but I'll put it on there anyway. The Salt Syndicate is for doing what's called a master of masters setup. So essentially what you can do is have one master server, and it talks to multiple masters, and then those masters talk to multiple minions. And so you can send commands from the SaltMaster down to the other masters, and via the syndicate it will pass those commands on to the minions, and then when the minions reply to their master, those masters will then reply to the main master. So it allows you to do this master of masters type setup, which comes in really, really handy when you're in big environments with a lot of servers, especially for things like, what version of, libc are we on? You can run a command and it spiders out to everything and then brings them all back. So it comes in really handy for that type of stuff. The Salt Cloud is definitely something you need. We will be using that. That allows us to interact with cloud services. So in our case it'll be Amazon, but you can connect to a bunch of different ones. There's a whole bunch of different cloud providers out there, and a lot of them are supported. So it's just a matter of configuring it to talk to the different ones. For the purposes of this video, it's only going to be Amazon Cloud, and we won't really need the API either, but I'll put it on there anyway. It's basically used for building interfaces and tools and stuff that talk to Salt. But I probably won't use that at all. And then once we're there, we can do this system control restart the minion. Yeah, I didn't think that was going to work. SaltMaster restart. Alright, so we now have a functional salt environment. Salt key, there shouldn't be any in there yet. And the first thing we'll do is kind of go through some of the files and directories and stuff. So in the Etsy salt folder, you'll see there's several different files in here. So this master file is the config that you need for this local machine, and then if we were going to run the minion, you'd use this file to configure the minion settings, but we're not going to run the minion on this. The Salt Cloud, obviously, for monitoring the cloud stuff, most of the configs you'll actually just we're going to put stuff in maps, profiles, and providers. So we're only going to touch these three folders really. But for the master, we do need to do some configuration in there. So master, we kind of skip a lot of this stuff. Don't have to worry too much about some of this. There's a few things that I like to change just for personal preference reasons. Down here, security. SSH modules, state settings. Okay, right here. Okay, so on this one, state verbose and state output settings can be used to change the way the state system data is printed to the display. By default, the data is printed. The state verbose can be set to true or false. When set to false, all data that has a result of true and no change will be suppressed. Okay, so we want that. When set to false. And the reason why we want that is because the stuff that that returns true and or no change, there's going to be so much of that stuff, and it just scrolls by, and it doesn't matter. You don't, if it passed and there was no problems with it, then I don't care about the output. I don't want to know. I just want to know what's broken. So when set to false, all data is results, so we want that. And we do want to change this one as well, because we want it to say, let's see here, if set to mixed, the output will be terse unless the state failed, in which case the output will be full. So changes, the output will be, so we want to change this to mixed. And then we got to come down here to our settings. Okay, now there's a bunch of different ways to set this up, and talking to a bunch of different people and talking to people at the Salt conferences, I've been to a couple of them now, and the best way to do this, well, I'm not going to say the best way, because that's not really true. It's really depends on how you and your company do things. So for me, the way we do things is base salt base. Okay. Now we will also do a, so for us we will do a dev, and we're going to do a QA and a prod. Okay, now this is something that is really nice, a nice little feature. Prod, oops, QA, dev. Okay, now in the land of Salt, in these file roots, they have basically what happens is it's called squashing, and so if you have these set up right, then everything that's in the directory above it gets smushed all into the same place. Okay, so in this case, if we put our prod here and our QA there, okay, and do the same thing this way, and I'll have to double check. These might be backwards. It might need to be this way, but we'll test it and then come back to it if we have to change it, but I'm going to leave it this way for now. But basically what happens is if you put a file, a state file, in this QA folder, you only have to put in the changes that you want from the prod folder. Okay, so if you've got a, let's say you've got Apache state file and a state file for PHP, and you need to make a change in the QA environment to the PHP one, then you can just copy the PHP one into the QA folder, and when it runs, it will still read the Apache one from the prod folder, and it will overwrite the PHP that's in the prod folder with the PHP that's in the QA folder. So I hope that makes sense, but we'll do a demonstration of that as time goes on. So this is how that's going to be set up. Now we've got to come down here and do similar to the pillar, but we won't do any squashing on the pillar. Pillar. Right here, pillar root. Okay, so roots. And everything's in YAML, so everything's got to be double spaced. Now for now, that's pretty much all we'll need. We will later need to come in here and do reactors. Okay, so that pretty much finishes up the configuration that we have to do to get this started, and now we're gonna have to restart the service. Oops. Okay, and then this will be the end of this video, and then in the next video we'll start doing the states and testing some of the other stuff and launching the machines and everything. But this was just the first one to get everything installed and configured in a kind of a default fashion. And then the next video we will go through setting up the Salt Cloud configuration and getting it so that it'll launch Amazon resources. And we'll go through that whole process and get all the machines, get it so that it'll launch machines repeatedly, and then from then we can start kind of configuring out the services and get everything to work together. So stay tuned for the next video.